So I guess we can wait a couple of minutes, but I want to make this piece my session a little bit more discussion oriented. Um, so the idea of it is, how do we create a sense of presence while we go virtual? It's very related with what's happening with the current conditions with COVID. And it's also related to the work that I'm really interested in, what I'm really passionate about, which is virtual reality, and how do we kind of go from Zoom meetings to creating a more sense of presence as we go into the virtual world. So let's wait like 1 or 2 minutes. I would love an introduction to you guys as well. I'm Shuang van Reizen. I work in VR. I basically got my start at Live, which is a mixed reality company. I worked with titles such as Beat Saber, Sound Self, Audio Trip. I currently work for a game publisher and I launch out games, and I'm also being involved with various collaboration projects to kind of bring Burning Man into the virtual space. So I'll talk more about that later on, but I would like to know more about you guys and see where you guys are from. Does anybody want to start? How about you, Gina?
Sorry, I just was in the. I'm actually trying to find a place to have this meeting. I'm in Hong Kong, and I also was online 2 days ago. I spent the last 3 days or so in AltSpace, where I was with the group building Burning Man there as well too. And I've been there with my daughter. I attended a religious sermon, earlier, a karaoke there and everything, all the different space. And then I teach at a university, VR and altered state consciousness.
Perfect. That's amazing. I'm glad that you actually tried AltSpace Burning Man, because then we could actually talk a little bit about it and like how it adds an extra layer from the current Zoom meetings. Does anybody else want to do a quick introduction?
Hi, how are you? What's the intro about? What do I have to tell you?
Just who you are and your experience with like digital meetings and digital presence. So the idea here is, how do we create presence when we go virtual, which is very much related to what's going on with COVID, with everything being on Zoom. And how do we like basically move from just a flat screen presence to something that's more aligned to what you have in real reality. So a project I'm going to talk about is basically social VR, and in relation to our community, it's like virtual Burning Man.
All right. Well, my name is Ariel. I'm from Argentina, and I've been using like Zoom mostly to do online courses, and also to take courses or meet with people, some friends, or to work also. With some colleagues, we meet here and we work. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
Hi, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good to hear. Yeah, I am currently in Lebanon actually. I've been landlocked here for the last 2 months, which has been the biggest blessing by far, because I really managed to get my focus aligned and a lot of projects going. So originally I'm Estonian. Yes, it's a country. I always like to make that joke because everybody knows it, but it's like so teeny tiny, you know. Yeah, and I'm a lot of things. I teach people meditation. I studied psychology and neuroscience. So I'm very much aligned with the things that we might be discussing here in the tech space also. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Future of Bitcoin Cash. Do you want to say anything, or are you good?
I think I'm good. What I do is use Zoom for the last 4 years, helping software developers communicate to each other. So I feel like I've been in preparation for this COVID thing for 4 years because I virtually all the time.
Perfect.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm a digital nomad, so I'm kind of a little bit like in the virtual space already. But yeah, like to start, like what is connected to you? Like how do you connect with another human? Like I want to ask that question and just kind of open it up. Like where do you feel a sense of connection right now? Is it mostly eye contact? Is it conversation? Because one of the things that's happening is Zoom fatigue. Like, even though we are seeing another loved one and we're able to connect with them through conversation, there's something missing in the sense of presence that's making people feel like they're alone. Like the idea of presence is the condition or feeling of being present or sharing part of a space with someone immediate. And it's the idea of also being present in the present moment with someone. So how do we relate this sense of presence with someone virtually? And it's a lot harder with Zoom because if you look at the Zoom meetings, it's just a bunch of little squares. And it's harder to do it on scale. For example, I participated in this virtual festival called Immersive, and it was really interesting because it was like a bunch of squares, everybody's dressed up, like wigs and everything else, and they are kind of partying, they have music in the background, there's like a DJ, and it was interesting because they did have separate rooms, so you can go to separate Twitch streams with DJs, you can go to separate Zoom meetings with different people and different DJs, but the thing is, there wasn't that spontaneity factor. Like if you actually go to a festival, you can stand right next to someone randomly, like right off stage by the speaker. You can turn to them and be like, hey, what's up? And then you start this conversation, and it's the spontaneous, like synchronistic connection from just being in that same space with someone that is kind of lost right now with Zoom meetings and our current method of like really connecting with people. So I want to explore and just kind of like, tell you more about what's being done to kind of mediate that. One of the things that goes all the way back is basically all these open platforms, kind of like World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Minecraft, and also this like kind of like very COVID kind of endeavor called Second Life. I don't know if you guys have heard of Second Life, but basically they're recreating a lot of the pieces of the world in Second Life, and they actually had miniature versions of universities. So I remember one university actually recreated their campus, and then the professor hosted one of his lectures completely on Second Life. But the question is, like, it gets better because you can actually stand right next to someone, you can actually have a conversation with someone and actually learn from a teacher surrounded with your other like classmates. So there's that, like, it adds an immediate level of feeling like, you're being present with someone because you're in this crowd. You can walk away from the teacher, you can walk back, and you could actually explore a little bit more. So that's kind of like a little bit better than like the Zoom meeting of just like it's like 2D panels, kind of like a TV. And another thing that's really interesting about these virtual festivals that I've gone to is it doesn't feel much different than putting on a YouTube like video of Mayan Warrior and then just listening to the set. Because there's not that sense of like, like I can interact, I can change the space, like I can change that experience. It's one feed. So even if you attend it live versus attending a recording, it's not the same. Versus you attending a festival live, you're actually in there, you're feeling the energy, you're feeling the vibes. And that's all gone when it goes virtual. So, so luckily we have VR, and I basically work in the VR space. And I just want kind of like a show of hands, like how many of you guys actually tried like VR, like not Google Cardboard, but the actual VR headset, like the Vive, the Oculus Rift, the Valve Index. Okay, perfect. So you guys know what I'm talking about. Like once you put on this VR headset, you kind of get taken to this other world. And there's actual auditory cues, like if you get closer to one object, the music will get louder. And if you move further away from an object, the music kind of like disappears. And you could actually spontaneously run into different avatars and actually have a conversation with them. So in the VR tech space, we have something called AltSpace, Rec Room, and VR Chat, which is social VR platforms. AltSpace is more for conferences. They have like a lot of tools, like speaking tools and everything else. So there's been a lot of virtual conferences taking place in AltSpace. And then there is Rec Room, which is kind of like miniature adventures, playing games with friends. Facebook is also creating another world called Facebook Horizons. It was supposed to be in beta, but I think it's been delayed. And it's going to be like a little bit of Minecraft too, because you can actually create your own world. So Facebook's trying to crowdsource makers to kind of create their space, which is very fascinating. And then the most popular is probably VR Chat. So VR Chat is like a social VR platform. It kind of went viral because Vive gave like a bunch of headsets to influencers and they started creating content. And one of them was a meme called Show Me the Way with Dewey. And that's basically when it became more well known about like social VR and VR Chat. And the great thing about it is that it's actually cross-platform. So you can actually join in with just your laptop. And there was also like basically a level up due to COVID, like the sense of feeling connected and kind of having more of a party, that you can actually do full body tracking with VR Chat. And one of the things that was covered was basically using full body tracking, hosting parties in VR Chat, and actually getting lap dances. So once one of the influencers did a video about that, like all the trackers from HTC Vive just kind of got sold out because they were like, we can do this. So it adds an extra enhanced level of presence and connection and the human element of fun, and also like little kinky taboo that they are able to do digitally. And then another experience that's really good, not so much on the social VR front, but there's a platform called the Wave VR, which is hosting festivals online. And they have festival acts from Glitch Mob, Imogen Heap, Lindsey Sterling, and you can watch some of the performances, like Lindsey Sterling's performances on YouTube. And it's like, you can have that experience, see what it's like, but it's better if you actually sign in as an avatar, because you get into your cave and then you basically go into like this like open expanse, and there's like movie posters, and every hour or so it replays, and you can actually jump into the experience and fly through these crazy like worlds, such as the Glitch Mob world. And then in Imogen Heap's world, she basically did a depth camera, like she basically scanned herself in as like a point dot cloud. So you can see her performing, and then there's like lights around her, and then she like bursts into light, and then she comes back as herself, and she's like massive to you. So the technology that Wave VR employs in order to make you feel really present with the performer is phenomenal. And due to the ability of technology, it takes it a whole new level, because the performer can be massive right next to you. It can go really small. You can feel like you're flying through various different worlds with like Imogen Heap and stuff like that. So it's very, very powerful. Like the first time I went into the Wave VR, I was like super emotional from the experience, and it was just magical, creative. And then I ran into like different people that gave me party poppers. So you can have these like little orbs, and you like hold it out, and then someone else can like shake your hand, and then both of you guys will experience like a trippy world of like guitars being like heads, or like a weird trippy like visual worlds of like rainbow melting and stuff like that. So they did a great job kind of like capturing that experience. And another one is like you're just running around and you meet random people, have a conversation, and then they add you as a friend right then and there as an avatar. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Like I just made a friend. That's something that's missing in Zoom right now. Like you can't just go to a Zoom festival and be like, oh my gosh, that like girl in the corner with like her pink glowing like pimp mug drinking alcohol and like a purple wig. I want to get to know that girl. You can't just ping that girl and be like, hey, I love your wig, let's hang out and have a random conversation. You would literally have to go to another like Zoom meeting and then try to connect there. And it's not that spontaneous encounter they can encounter in this virtual space, such as like Wave VR, VR chat, alt space, and rec room. And then how many of you guys have been to Burning Man at all? Just a show of hands, like know about Burning Man? Okay, so Burning Man is kind of like the mecca of all festivals, me personally stating that. It's basically once a year. It takes place in Black Rock City, which is in Nevada. And the theme of it is like you just kind of show up there, contribute, like no spectators, everybody's a participant. And thus the Burning Man board mostly just supplies like the porta potties, center camp, and the man to be burned with like all the pyrotechnics that you can ever want. And everything else is built by the community. And as such, we're kind of doing that right now. So Burning Man canceled this year, and they basically pointed out that they are taking community involvement. They had a Google form, and one of the things that came out of it was this guy named Greg Edwards. He actually recreated Burning Man in Unity. He's like a Unity developer. So he like recreated Burning Man, and he made it to scale, and they presented it way back in like 2015. And the board was like, this is really cool, but we don't know what to do with it. And then now, due to Burning Man being canceled and they're looking to create like a virtual Burning Man experience, he uploaded the experience into AltSpace. And now you can like actually put on a headset, explore the world in beta, and run around. And the great thing about it is the fact that you can actually go there, meet up with a friend, and go exploring to like the man, to the temple. Unlike the real world, you can actually fly around and see like Burning Man from the sky, and then kind of go back down. You can teleport to Mayan Warrior instead of having to ride your bike all the way across Playa. There's less dust, so there's that benefit. And it's been interesting. And to keep with the ethos of like what is Burning Man, it's mostly community built at this point. So everybody in the community kind of brings something to it. Like a lot of designers are donating their time. A lot of 3D modelers are donating their time. So they're recreating a lot of the previous pieces of Burning Man in this virtual space and alt space. And it's really interesting because they actually incorporate a lot of things that's very unique to Burning Man. Like, for example, you can actually go to the Mayan Warrior world, and then there's these staff, and you can actually pick up the staff, and you just go to a place that has a fire, like little bonfire, and then you just put the staff in, and then they turn into like fire staff, and you can actually like fire spin with it. So you just like pull like the middle trigger, and then it just starts spinning for you. So they incorporate that piece in, and then they are also incorporating functionality. Like there is a Burning Man camp called Costume Cult, and it's New York based, and the theme of it is you show up there and you get like a free costume item, like either like a dress, a hat, something weird. And they kind of created that in AltSpace where you go up and then there's like a menu of items that you can actually get. So you can put on like a lava hat, a red hat, and then just kind of see what your avatar looks like. So there's that in the works right now, which helps more with a sense of presence and recreating the magic of spontaneous encounters, the magic of like, you know, being very creative in the space, and also the magic of like randomly connecting with someone while you're exploring. So AltSpace VR is worth a try if you haven't tried it. And if you have a headset or a connection to a headset, it's definitely worth going to like virtual Burning Man if you've never been. And the issue with the virtual Burning Man is like the server size, because a lot of the rooms and the worlds can only host so much. So another thing that's being done is basically duplicating the world and maybe even putting the world into other platforms as well. So that is one of the virtual spaces for like Burning Man to kind of exist this year. Luckily, the theme this year is so on point. It's the multiverse. So it doesn't have to be related to just alt space Burning Man. It can go to Twitch, it can go to Zoom, it can go into Minecraft, it can go to Second Life. All those worlds can exist. And then there's something called remoteburn.org as well, which was created as an open source project. So in essence, I think in my last 10 minutes, I'm just gonna wrap up and talk about just like what is presence to you, and also like where do you guys envision virtual like connection going? Because one of the things that's really interesting is facial tracking. One of the inventions that's coming out right now is basically scanning your face, and then when you have a VR headset, you can talk normally, and through AI it recognizes the facial expressions, and then you can actually be a floating head talking. And that's a lot more connective than just having an avatar talk at you. So with that kind of experience, it's kind of like Power Rangers with like giant floating head that's giving instructions. So with that kind of invention, it kind of gives you that sense of connection to like a face and eyes, like, you know, eyes closing, the mouth and the expression that it has. So you can actually read emotions a lot better. And that could actually really help in terms of like creating virtual healing spaces. Like, for example, like virtual like circling, and people can just talk in a circle with just their face. And it could actually allow for more global unity and global connection, with people actually able to meet and hosting like large circles where people can just talk and connect. And it's just like this. It's like, I'm currently in Tulum, but I'm from California, and there's people from Estonia and everywhere in the world. So it's kind of amazing to have like this connection that happens in the digital space that you can't really be created in like the real world. Like, we can't just teleport to each other right now from our homes. We have to like kind of take a flight, and it takes a long time. So there's some added benefits of going virtual, like, you know, the spontaneous connection with someone from like thousands of miles away, but still like, that connection, that like sense of presence with someone is still being worked on, and it's still something that's in the works, and it's still like the subconscious exploration to the human psyche of what makes us really connected as human beings. So yep, I think that was majority of my talk, and I would love to hear from you guys what you would love to see happen in the virtual space. Does anybody want to go first? Yeah.
Oh, I was the creators of the Burning Man had us meet, and so we met in the world, and I've actually spent the last 3 days, you know, in alt space, you know,
Nice.
with, you know, they had open mic night karaoke. I got raped by someone. Proposition, you know, it's interesting because with the controllers, you can be like this, you can be like this, or you can be like this. And so there were 3 of us standing there, and spontaneously we just started playing rock, paper, scissors. And then one guy started doing this, and then, you know, started writing some really crass stuff. And it's kind of Wild West there. One of the things, just visiting a lot of the different worlds, is being someone that's been at Burning Man, you know, just kind of seeing the playa there, seeing the bikes around, you know, you get like a first order approximation of kind of the experience, and, you know, just, you know, walking to the main places, and, you know, in some sense, it's kind of a clean experience of that. But then the other big thing was there were a couple of other places where an interesting thing that added to presence was just the sound design. And so there were places where, you know, there was outdoors, and then you have crickets and everything, and then you can walk inside the room where there's air conditioning or something. And just the subtle sound design things were really able to kick things off. And there was this Hawaii island where, you know, you have the sound of the ocean and everything.
Yeah.
And so we've got some cues, like most people in alt VR aggregate at the campfire. And for those of you that don't have a VR setup, they have a 2D. You can actually download a client, and if you have a PC, you can run it on a PC. It's not the same thing, nowhere near, but you can get a feel of it. And so
Yeah.
sound design is a really important thing. And related to that, I'm sending a link. If you have 2 hours, especially for you, Shuang, if this is it's a show by a person that he has 2 mics, and he's got a one of those heads with 2 microphones, and he does the performance just in sound, and it's amazing. He tells the story and he creates the sound environment with his voice, in the ambience and all this other stuff as a live performance. And just in terms of giving you a sense of presence, one of the things, I don't know if you know, he's got these Sennheiser heads that has 2 microphones, and you watch this thing wearing headphones. So you have to wear headphones when you experience this. And he just goes up to it and he goes, to the left ear. And then for me, when I felt it, just shivers, goosebumps, all of that proximity of having like someone blow into your ear, that sensitivity, the physiology automatically responds to that. And so there are ways of creating presence in that way with sound. And so that's the big thing there. But, if you look at it, there are certain things where this kind of engagement is better, especially when people have their video cameras on, because you get a sense of them and you get the immediate feedback. In VR, it was really interesting because you could see people with their heads move, you could see them nodding, and you can, for the ones that had the hand controllers, you could see the subtle cues. And even in conversation, one person said something, and said, "Oh, I thought you were talking to him because you weren't looking at me when you said that." And so there is all of this nonverbal cueing that goes on in the 3D space. But it after a while, it's just these avatars just standing there, and so there isn't really much of a transition. Having said that, we thematically we were talking about God and theology, and if you look at spirit versus the material world, it was really interesting to have that conversation in the VR realm. Because then it's like, where is this? And then what if your physical body is your soul? And the VR is like, because in the VR, there isn't really anything you could do. So there's a physical safety, but there's still a psychological, especially, getting raped and everything. But it's very interesting that, from a theological perspective, someone invented, alt space, someone created all of this stuff. And so there is a creator that created this thing that we're experiencing. And there is something that's eternal that will last the experience in the VR realm. So we were able to explore theological topics in a metaphysical way, in an environment that led to those questions. Lastly, related to Burning Man, I brought with me a guy named Jason Swami.
Yeah, I know Swami.
Yeah, so Swami was with me too. Yeah, Robot Heart. And so he looked at it too and was like, "Oh wow, this is like nostalgia." And his view is that if you were going to do Burning Man in VR, you wouldn't just recreate the playa. You would do something. It's really about creating a new experience. And then related to that, with lights flashing, with sounds, there's a lot that you can do to induce altered states of consciousness. And so I have a person that does that. There are things like flicker effect, binaural audio, and all these things. And so with kind of trippy visuals and with biofeedback related stuff, there's a guy named Robin Arno that does a thing called Sound Self.
I work for him actually.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I work for him actually. I love.
Oh, you're based in Austin, or?
Yep. No, basically, SoundSolve is worth the experience if you guys want to try it. Also, they have they launched SoundSolve just now, And then there's a free trial if you guys want to try it, because that is an altered digital state in itself. It is amazing. I basically been using it every day to kind of help meditate. But yeah, it's like creating trancey effects.
So there's Robin, there's Nana Reeves as well, you know, with Trip. There are many of these kind of things that you can do to kind of create that. And so with kind of a digital Burning Man kind of a thing, and with these kind of things, you could potentially create kind of new kind of mind-altering experiences and have it happen.
Shared trips, because that's how like a lot of people really connect. Yeah, another thing about it is like I like the fact that like in the worlds you can actually run away from like the Mind Warrior like art card, and you could actually hear it fade away. And then another thing about Sound Stuff is like they actually did a thing at Burning Man way back in like 2015. They actually created a structure that was for Sound Self, and then afterwards they burned it. So the great thing about Burning Man VR is the fact that it's actually not, it doesn't have the sense of like, you know, temperance, because like Burning Man, it's like leave no trace. So everybody comes in, builds Burning Man, and then they all leave, and then there's no trace of it. So in the virtual world, we can actually do this year where it's like Burning Man, so it's not too far out there, because one of the things I've realized with technology is like if you make it too abstract, people don't get it. Versus if you make it closer to real reality, they can understand it. That's why when Apple created these icons, the little notebook one was a icon of a real notebook, because if it was anything else, it'd been too abstract. They wouldn't know what it is for. So you kind of need to have that kind of indicator in real reality to help them realize what it is for. If you made it too abstract, too out there, I think certain people will be like, what is this? Is this Burning Man on acid? Like, I don't know what's going on. So yeah. And then on that note, yeah, thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun. I think my time's up. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm Swan VR, and you can find me. Would love to continue the discussion if you guys are interested in like virtual worlds and like basically how do we connect more as we go digital. Yeah. Cheers. Have a beautiful one.
See you.